live.
Hello, welcome to Covendom, HexFest. Not actually live, but we have a live audience, which is really weird.
Take in front of a live audience.
It's really weird. So we're actually sort of hosting, just as a little bit of HexFest, we are setting aside a little bit of time for the Alexandrian tradition of witchcraft. It's not like our Coven soiree, so there are Alexandrians from all over the world. I am shaking the camera. There are Alexandrians from all over the world that are at this event. Some of them known, some of them not known, secret initiates. That's just kind of how witchcraft works. It's a secret society. So we're having an opportunity here for people to meet and mingle. So we're only going to be doing a real quick kind of thing, saying hello to all of you on YouTube and Facebook. And me and Elie and Levi will be resuming season 4 probably sometime after October. Because, well, we have a busy schedule, and we usually set it aside for that time. Yep. So it is coming. So this is just this is like a weird Christmas special. That's what's happening.
Oh, I love it.
Like when
Like a weird
show.
It's like that.
Christmas
It's going to be
July.
like that Star Wars episode special cartoon that we had way back when that made no sense, and we don't know what it was
This
about.
is not
The
part of the
Ewoks
canon.
or whatever. So I'm just going to give a preface to what this is. So in the 1960s, Alex and Maxine Sanders moved from Manchester to London and began working in another coven. They had a coven in Manchester, but they began working in what we know today as the London Coven, which would eventually become known as the Temple of the Mother. So in this coven is this place in London, in Canonical Gardens, is where the term Alexandrian came into being. It's also where some of our well-known practices manifested in. So Alex had actually been working probably from the 50s in some way or another. Right. And we don't know the exact date of his initiation, but he was running the Manchester Coven and involved in witchcraft long before the Alexandrian tradition. What people often don't realize is at that time, about the 1960s, you had Alex setting up shop in London, and you had a man named Raymond Buckland who just gotten initiated coming here to the United States. So this is all happening at the same time. They, at that time, all called it witchcraft, and they didn't say Gardnerian or Alexandrian. That was something that manifested later to make a distinction between the two. And as time's gone on, there's more distinctions and more fantasies, and more distinctions and more fantasies. So all of you have to learn and educate yourself and navigate that world. However, we are just going to set aside this time to speak about Alexandrian tradition as a core, and we don't have a particular topic. However, the audience, or our guests, I think we should call them our guests, because they're guests of the soiree, feel special saying audience in the studio.
Our live studio audience.
No one believes us. They probably think we just have a clapping machine.
Just
press the
three people.
button, if you've watched Covendom. So we're hoping they guide it, so therefore the topic could go anywhere, but we do hope they keep the questions to Alexandrian witchcraft or something about the religion of witchcraft that's pertinent to what we're talking about over here. But it could go in any direction because this is Covendom Live. So these are my co-hosts, Levi Rowland,
Start strong,
and Elie Barnes, and welcome to HexFest Covendom. And here we go. So the Alexandrian tradition is one of the two sects of the line of succession that began in the 1950s, and depending on what you believe, can be traced to sort of originating in the 1930s. And if you follow that, the breadcrumb trail a little further, you can take it way back, almost into the 1800s, because it's connected to the Western occult movement in general.
It is.
So, these people were often involved, and I talk about it in my book, shameless plug, Initiation to
100%.
Witchcraft.
Available for purchase.
On iTunes. So basically, the way our occult world works today functions very much like how the mystery schools functioned in ancient times, where there's a lot of cross-pollination that happened. And so the chain of initiation, I think, sort of has kind of always been like that. It's like a snake where the knowledge and the power evolves and changes to these different groups, yet there's a cohesive connection. And you can definitely find that within these two lines of succession. And that's not important to everyone. It was obviously important to me, which is why I chose to get initiated, which is something I think a lot of people don't understand. I chose to get initiated, right? So I didn't get birthed from my mother as an initiate. So that's a choice. So when you're talking to initiate, you're talking to somebody who has made a conscious choice. And so you should realize that in the very beginning of the conversation, they chose to do this thing, right? So Alexandrian witchcraft and Gardnerian are cousins who are almost as good as we are really what's remarkable to me about these traditions is that when you're looking at the history of the modern world, we are the only priesthood of the goddess in Western civilization. And we've now been going, depending on when you believe the starting point is, about 100 years. It can give or take, depending on what you believe. Right. But it's been a significant amount of time, and it's still going strong. Today we are all over the world, and we are still very healthy traditions. We have lots of initiates. We have lots of covens. But we are a secret society. We're like the Masons. And so people think they know, but they don't, right? They know the snippets they read in books, or they know the snippets that they read on the internet. Most of the time, which is a generalization that's not really completely correct. For instance, when you get online, you'll hear that Alexandrian witchcraft is Gardnerian witchcraft with Kabbalah, and we wear robes.
We're not naked all the time.
We're not naked all the time. Those are the two things. So, we do have a strong leaning towards the Kabbalah, but it's not required. And, we do get naked.
Allegedly.
We also do wear robes. But the understanding, the generalization is it's just people piecing together a bit of, if you're sitting in the front row, you are not going to be talking too much, right? Thank you. As we are recording. But if you're asking a question, you can talk. So I'm going to now let you guys each make an introduction, and then we will get to the questions. And you have to have the first one now.
So one of the things that we did when we started Covendom and I've got a lot of people coming up to us during HexFest and talking about Covendom or watching it or reading Brian's book or whatever is, there are a lot of voices in witchcraft now. This happened very recently. It was not that long ago that regardless of what your interest was, the occult, witchcraft, paganism, it was a very small group of people, right? There's not a lot of voices in contemporary witchcraft that are what I think we would call religious, right? It is not popular anymore to call witchcraft a religion. It is called a practice, or it is called, something you're interested in. And Brian and I practice the religion, and Elie, and many other Alexandrian initiates who are here, we practice the religion of witchcraft, right? It is a religious initiatory system. That is off-putting to a lot of people. And I am kind of happy that it's off-putting to a lot of people, right? Because I think that we need that. I think that there should be a lot of voices in contemporary witchcraft. I want there to be a lot of dissent. But our purpose in doing Covendom and having these conversations is to present witchcraft to you in a way that you might not have heard it, right? In a way where it is a religious cult, where it is not simply a hobby or an interest or something that you pick up, like knitting or crochet. Not that I'm anti-knitting, I love to knit. Me and Tom Daly, apparently. But
do you really knit?
All the time. But that's not what we wanted. So yeah, sometimes we do sound a little strident, right? We jokingly call ourselves Shiite Alexandrians, right?
Actually, Christian jokingly called
He did call us Shiite Alexandrians. But that's why. And so I think that's important for us, is to have that voice in the community, that there is a form of witchcraft that is an initiatory cult, devoted to the goddess, devoted to the god, devoted to initiatory practices. It is not simply spell work. We can, do spell work. That's wonderful. We're a magical religion. But you do not need to be an initiate to work magic. But you do need to be an initiate to be an Alexandrian or Gardnerian witch. So we are trying to provide that voice.
Blessed
and
be.
I think that's what we're here for.
Blessed be.
Blessed be, Elie.
Blessed be.
Now things are going to get weird.
Now
No,
it's
they're
going to get a little weird.
I will be very traditional in my answers and thoughts about this. I feel that from our childhood, when we're very young people in this lifetime on this earth, there's a different and original feeling about yourself. And as you grow up and you start to investigate the qualities of your soul, you say, well, I feel differently about myself than my family or my neighborhood. And there are things that resonate with me in place, the genus loci, in energy and spirits and gods, and certain people and personalities that you feel, Gaia, Hecate, Anubis, Hermes Trismegistus, and you think, I know them from my past. They're not brand new people to me, gods to me. There's something there that has a quality of long distance, eternity. And so you start as a young person, and you feel different and you are reverent to older gods. You are a
This
magical.
is really all about you, right?
No, it's not. You are magical, and you recognize a magical multi-universe, and you begin to explore and work in these ways, different from your peers and your schoolmates. And then you find friends, colleagues, witches, magicians who are initiated in certain traditions from maybe the 60s, maybe the 50s, but you recognize it's much older and that you're part of that and that you're reincarnated. We say this in witchcraft. I'm a reincarnated witch. I didn't start out in this lifetime. This is from my soul's work lifetimes ago. And witches today say, I was not a witch just in this lifetime. I was a witch prior and prior and prior. And so you come about today, and in the Alexandrian and Gardnerian traditions, there's the idea that this is not your first time. And you're here respectfully, seriously, to do the work again. And we're here together, not about me, about you that know in your heart that this is not your first lifetime, this is not your first chance at witchcraft. You've been doing it a while. And we recognize you and invite you to work with us in a tradition, very serious, in the religion of witchcraft.
There's a disclaimer to everything she just said.
That's not true. I think that's still right.
That's true.
No, everything she said is right, but we're not really inviting everyone. Whoever you were talking to, we are, because you're reaching out to particular
As he
people.
puts my hand on his lap,
There's no sexual harassment in the Alexandrian
he
tradition.
said, well,
Only love.
But I do think we know. I do think we know where we belong and where we're going. Indian, American Indian, Mexican, European, Hindu. You know where you're coming from, and you know where you're going. If we're with you, my tear rolled down my cheek. If we're with you, if you're with us, you know where you're going with us.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Okay, so now we're going to hand the microphone over to all of you. So whoever wants to ask a question, stand up. Thank you. Thank you for the commitment.
Give her a
Or
clap.
you can raise your hand. You can raise your hand if you don't want
Yes.
to. But
The
I think it's
front
easier
row.
to hear you if you stand up.
See, Brian told me I had to be first anyway.
Well,
You do. Be first.
So my question is, I know I'm called to be an initiate in either Alexandrian or Gardnerian. How do I determine which one?
Ooh,
I like that
Let
question.
you guys go
beautiful
first.
question.
I want to make 2 points. One is, we are the same religion. I recognize Gardnerian initiates as completely valid.
So did Alex.
And so did Alex. Most Gardnerians I've met also recognize Alexandrian initiates, not all of them, but the vast majority that I've met personally. But it is very important to realize, traditionally, our differences were much wider than is commonly believed. There is a different ethos and spiritual egregore behind these traditions. Alexandrian witchcraft, for me, is much more free. Alexandrian witchcraft is more cosmic. Gardnerian witchcraft, in my experience, and I am not practicing Gardnerian, but in my experience, it is more tied to the earth. It is more insular than we are. Alex was better at stealing the microphone than Gardnerians were. That's not a judgment, it was just a fact, right? Gardner started it, Alex just did it better, right? He was better at being a showman. So Alexandrian witchcraft is more open, it is more public, it is also often, I find, freer. But the advice I want to give, because you asked a question about advice, is you need to understand that the most important thing about a coven is it is a shared religious experience of raising power. So let's say there is a Gardnerian and an Alexandrian coven near you, or within driving distance or travel distance. I would obviously argue that you should be Alexandrian. I am biased. But what I would argue more than that is, if you talk with these people, do you feel their power? Do you feel that shared connection? Could you raise power with them in a circle and worship the gods with them? And that's what needs to guide the choice. We do not believe in singular witchcraft. This is another sticking point that sets us apart from modern neo-pagan practice. We work in a coven, period. If you're alone, there's a problem, right? It means that something has went wrong. You can't find a coven, or maybe you're traveling and whatnot. But we work as a group, and there's a mystery behind that. If you rewatch episodes of Covendom, we talk about it as the other, right? This Jungian sort of concept. That's what I would say, is if you can't decide between the two, you need to find your tribe. Who are you actually going to be able to practice with? If the only thing accessible to you is a Gardnerian coven, be Gardnerian. Or if you really crave Alexandrian craft, be willing to travel. But you need to find the group. we are a religion of the flesh. We are not an ideological faith, right? We are a religion that is practiced in skin and bones. I know. But that's the biggest advice.
Very well, good. Elie?
My feeling is that you go online and you look at beautiful photographs of Gerald Gardner, Doreen Valente, and then you look at Alex Sanders and Maxine Sanders, and you say, these people are beautiful. These people are older, and they're lovely and exciting and energetic, and their sexuality just exudes from them, and you say, I want these people. This would be Elie, Brian, and Levi. I love Gerald Gardner. He died on my birthday, November 5th, and I was 10 years.
Yet?
10 years.
Tell me the reincarnation of Gerald Gardner.
He died. He died on.
Oh, it could be true.
He died February of 1964. I was born in November of 1964, exactly 9 months after his death.
Oh my God, Ellie's Gerald Gardner. I'm going to have to rethink my life now.
Right. So I always thought, well, okay, fine, he's cool. He was good. And then you look at the new chapter of witchcraft, which I think is Alexandrian. It's not better or different, really, in deep style. Maybe it's a little bit of style, and I just think who is moving forward in the world to bring witchcraft into the modern age, into the 20th, 21st, 22nd century. I think it's the Alexandrian tradition, but if I was very stubborn and very hooked to the past, I'd go Gardnerian. It's the original traditional initiatory witchcraft tradition. But the Alexandrian is the way, I think, facing into the future, which is why I'm interested in promoting it.
Interesting.
So, basically, there's two angles to this question. One is circumstantial. So, this religion, the religion of witchcraft, is not accessible and initiatory in every place in this country. This is a very big country. So, I know where a lot of covens are, and I know for a fact there are a lot of states that don't have either. Right. So, you might be in a state where one or the other is what's acceptable. And I could tell you now, if I would have become initiated into any of the lines if that was my only option. And they're all good. They're all good.
Definitely.
Right? I had the opportunity to, I suppose, sample the wares a little bit in a sense, but I also think destiny drove me to the Alexandrian tradition, and I also very much believe that there's a philosophical difference between Alexandrian and Gardnerian witchcraft. They're both right. It's the exact same religion, and our practices are very extremely similar. They differ slightly in certain areas, and we are better at magic, But that's because we're also greedier. Alexandrians love beauty and they love power, and we love our freedom. But this is witchcraft either way, right? So we worship the same gods. We are working from the same book. It's the same Book of Shadows. The Alexandrian Book of Shadows is the same book as the Gardnerian Book of Shadows. It's not a different book. What you have is you've got different lineages, whether it's Alexandrian, Sheffield, the Whitecroft line, or the Olwen lines, is because they were copied by different people. And through those things, people made different mistakes in their copying. And so they're all a little different, but they're the same book. So it's not actually, there's no such thing. And it wasn't called the Gardnerian Book of Shadows. It was called the Witchcraft Book of Shadows. Some of these lines we have that are Gardnerian are newer than the Alexandrian line. So Alexandrian witchcraft, for instance, is older than the Olwen lines. The American Gardnerian lines are the newest branch of this. Meaning that by the time Alex and Maxine were setting up shop in London, they'd already been running a coven in Manchester. Uncle Bucky was just getting over here.
Yeah.
Right? And the States are a whole complicated thing anyway, because all of the American initiatory lines early on were all very flawed in their training. It's not anyone's fault. We didn't have the internet. It was hard for people to communicate, and so all the pioneers that brought it to America originally went to England and trained usually for a couple weeks. We're given the Book of Shadows, whereas the people in England were training with each other for years. It's changed now because we can fly and we can get on Skype and we can do all these things. So it's a very different world now, and a lot of American witches are reaching out to the UK had been making fun of us for a very long time, because those American witches, how they do it,
Yeah.
And we've heard it, right? So we fortunately our coven was blessed with opportunities to be trained from someone in the UK, so that was a benefit that we had. But a lot of covens and a lot of lines are going back and doing that now. But I'm not knocking the ones who had to come here and make their own way at that time. They are our elders still, and they were able to take that little bit of the book, being handed the book and seeing a few rituals, and carry on with it, and it manifested anyway, very powerfully, really. So I think we are all kind of the same. However, if I was going to, so two parts, circumstantial, what could you do, and do you want to do it? Because then you have to like the coven, and the coven has to like you. So there's that. Every coven is autonomous. There's no Alexandrian rule to bring someone in. It's circumstantial. Do they have room? Do they want to? Do they like you? Do they want to look at you every week naked? All of these things could be a thing. Do they hike into the woods? Do they not? It's all very circumstantial. It's not always personal either. Sometimes it could be they're just full, or they're taxed and they don't want to train anyone new right now. Like, all these things can happen. So where you are is the thing. But if you had the luxury of choosing, because you don't, let's just say that right now, none of you, unless you live in Salem, you do not have the luxury of, or you're rich. If you're rich or you live in Salem, you could choose, or the UK, Salem, rich. Then you could choose what you're going to get, okay? Otherwise, it's where can you get to? That's just the point blank statement. So, but if you had the choice, I'd say study the philosophies of all the lines, study their practices as much as you can, and talk to those people available as much as you can, and ask them any questions as you can, because there are differences. There is a huge philosophical split between Alexandrian and Gardnerian witchcraft. Not a religious split, a philosophical split. And the American Gardnerian lines have a split between everyone, because it evolved very differently. Yeah. So they have, for instance, their own secret names of the gods that no one else uses. Alexandrians and UK Gardnerians use the same secret names of the gods. American Gardnerians have different ones. That's how split it is. And they're the newest branch. But they are the same gods. Let's put that out there. But, it really is the philosophy of Alexandrian witchcraft, that we, for instance, do certain things that some Gardnerians will be like, oh my God, and we're like, yep, we're doing it, so there is a split there. But the actual religious practice is the same practice. We do everything that Gardnerians do. We just maybe don't put the same emphasis on it, and we're not as controlling. Doesn't mean we don't have control. We're a priesthood. We absolutely are controlling. Any priesthood is controlling. Anything that's training you is. If you're going to go be a doctor, you're going to have a certain amount of control. There's rules, right? So it happens. So we're not sitting here going, there's no control. You do everything you want if you're Alexandrian witch. No. But we are way less controlling the Gardnerians, because our whole training system is geared towards that freedom. And in the end, we're all brothers and sisters in the magical circle, and we all sit together. It's not about ranks. It's about training. Whereas with a Gardnerian, there is a little bit more sometimes, depending on the line, because there are some lines, like the Whitecroft line or the Sheffield line, who are not that controlling in a way that some other Gardnerians are. So it just depends. So seek that out. But I'll tell you right now, the line I would least like to be in is the Olwen lines, which I have upline that is. So technically speaking, I've got that witch DNA. But I wouldn't want to be a Long Island, a California line, or a Kentucky line Gardnerian. I wouldn't want to be that. But if it was the only option I had, I would be that before I would be anything else. They're not bad. It's just that they are the most controlling from me. But they're also good, and what they offer far outweighs that control. They're not like crazy controlling. They're not like, you can't talk to your mom anymore, but they're a little bit more controlling in their craft.
You're not going to end up on the first 48.
Yeah, no witchcraft tradition is like that kind of controlling. No. When we say we're a cult, well, it's because we're a fertility cult or a goddess cult, and that's meant in the mystical sense.
Not to wear black sneakers.
Yes, but I do think that we are the most free of it. But it's priesthoods. They're all priesthoods. So there's a level of control in all of it. So we way over answered that question. Don't know if it helped, but anyone else, please. I'll start picking you.
Now that we've given answers, everybody's like, I'm good.
I want the brave one.
I'm good, thank you.
If you... Go ahead.
You mentioned a few minutes ago that, like, you're like, okay, so if you're, like, how we see it is if you're practicing by yourself, like, what's wrong with that or whatever. So I'm asking, if you're an Alexandrian witch, how does that affect your solo practice on your own?
Okay.
I said I would go last for everything.
So we can practice alone in the sense of I can work multiple points of our rites, and I can work multiple forms of magic. I can work almost any form of magic on my own. It's not the same thing, though. The question, we've got this question before, and I think people believe that there is a judgment behind that if you're working alone, it's because we're, saying it's wrong. It's morally or ethically wrong. No, it doesn't work within our system. So in the initiatory lines of witchcraft, there is a spiritual and psychological event that's happening in our rites that requires another human soul. The only analogy I've ever used that I think gets it is love. You cannot be in love by yourself. You can do some other things by yourself, but it's not the same, right? It's not the same. It is a separate thing, right? And so there is a spiritual aspect of having to have your ego bounce off someone else's. It's very animus kind of thing, right? Without that, our rites do not function. That doesn't mean that I can't practice alone. So the way that I think it influences my private practice is I crave the goddess, right? And I will seek that out. So it will draw me back into the circle over and over again, right? That hunger for her, that hunger for that experience. So I think that's how it impacts it. I can do the magic on my own, but frankly, I'd rather not.
I'd like to say, too, that if you are alone in your work and you just find yourself in a city or town that doesn't have a lot of other witches or traditional witchcraft people, Alexandrian or Gardnerian, would we recommend that you don't practice at all? No, we would not. We would say your god forms, your deities, your altar, your space is very valid, and that we would like you to show up, to meditate, to pray, and to use your energy into your magical working in devotion to the gods. Absolutely. In our style, where we're working with others, polarity-wise, males and females, we would think your work is more energetically powerful and ritually enriched because you're working with a group, and hopefully males and females, just because of the organs, just because of the polarity, not your sexual tradition, not your gender preference. It's just your bodies. That's ideal. It's more powerful. But would we say don't work on your own? No. But you can devote, practice, pray, energetically pour out your heart and your soul to the old gods, to Mother Earth. Of course you are going to. Is it ideal to bring that personal practice into the coven with your fellow coveners? That's really ideal. But I think we're saying both, right, Levi?
Yes, I think you can work on your own, yes, but I would say initiatory witchcraft requires a coven.
Initiatory requires a coven, but should you not do anything at your own home? No, you should sit, work, energetically pray,
Brian
meditate.
talks about that in his book, like in
I
initiation.
think I'll just talk for myself.
Yeah, you go.
Look at how they handle me. So basically, yeah, but what they both said, right? So we don't, I think a huge misunderstanding is that we don't have personal practices. Every member who has ever been in our coven has had personal practice that had nothing to do with Alexandrian witchcraft. And that's not a problem, it's not a taboo. But yes, the system of, being in a priesthood implies not alone, right? And there's many layers in which we're not alone. There's the global layer in which we're not alone. Alexandrian priests are all over the world. We're not alone that way. And then it gets reduced to the coven structure. Obviously there are situations and times when we are alone, even as priesthood, because we move or because of whatever. But we don't tend to like it for very long, and we change it. And that's the whole thing. We love being in our groups. I love working magic by myself, but I love working with my coven and the things that we do. Like, it's just that's what resonates with me. It's not knocking solitary witchcraft. It's just that there's not the only problem with solitary witches is they're not solitary enough. You know, I've said that for years. I'm like, stop talking to everyone about it if you're solitary. You know, they'll get on Facebook groups and be like, well, I'm solitary, but this is what I think. Let's all join hands. You know, so you're not really solitary then, are you? If I was a solitary witch, I would be very cloak and dagger and never tell anyone. I'd be quite wicked too. I sometimes wish I was a secret initiate so I could wear hooded black robes and stab people and disappear into the dark. Yeah, I know I do it already, but someone might notice me or recognize me.
It's not the same.
If I'm secret, they can't clock me. So, I definitely think that that's a misunderstanding, but it is a priesthood. So if you're serving in a priesthood, if you are a priest or priestess of any religion, and I think this is sort of a sad thing that happens in what we call paganism, is there's a trend now. I'm a priestess of, Hecate or something. Why? Because you like her. You're not a priestess if you're just sitting in your house lighting candles to Hecate. That's not how that word even works. So a priesthood always in any culture or in any religion implies service and community. Period. So that's the difference. So you can't really be by yourself and serving a community at the same time. And yeah, you don't necessarily have to be initiated to be a priest, but you have to have a community that recognizes you as one. Right? So that's that. Somebody else ask a question or I'll start.
Oh, 8:30, just letting you know.
He's supposed to let me know.
He did. I told you.
Oh.
Chain, Brian. Chain
All
of
right, well, we're going to
communication.
do one more question.
Perfect.
Then.
I
So
love
whoever
that.
is asking the next question, the brave person, the magical 3 is the last question. And then you can ask private questions. We'll all get very drunk and have an orgy.
Ow.
I didn't sign that form. Yeah.
So this is for the Sassy Trinity.
Is that our title now? The Sassy
The
Trinity.
sassy Trinity.
Follow the
I
sound of
love
the Holy
that.
Spirit.
Which is which?
Just a simple question, like you were
Good
talking
father.
about how you choose to be an initiate. What is the main thing, like if you could boil it down, why each of you chose this tradition?
Great place to
chose to be an initiate?
Great place to end.
We did make the mistake of not actually stating the questions. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
state this one.
So for those of us who are watching,
Because we
the
don't know if they
question-
can hear you guys.
Yeah.
We don't know.
The question was
Fine.
kind of to distill why we chose to be initiated, why you would choose this instead of something else, right? Why not just be solitary or, pagan or whatever. I was very religious in my youth. I was very Catholic. I converted to Catholicism, Protestant family. I wanted to be a Dominican priest. When I left that, very angry, non-believer, seeker, etc., I chose to be initiated because, very simple reason, God showed up. It works. There's juice. There's power. I have been in masses in Notre Dame Cathedral. I have been in masses all over the world. I have been in multiple religious traditions, not as a member, but as a looking for something. There's just not a connection. I get to a plateau and nothing clicks, right? Religion needs to be transformative, or I think it is a mummer's play. If your religious tradition is not transforming your life, I don't see it as a valid, ecstatic religion. I don't see it as something that is actually transformative and magical. I see it as a hobby. And I know that sounds harsh, and I know that I sound judgmental, but the world is too mediocre as it is, and I can't celebrate that anymore. No more acoustic guitar masses at Saint whatever. Like, I can't deal with that. Yeah, God does not live in a store. God does not live in an IKEA, right? I can't deal with that. And so initiatory religion, of which we are a part of, but we're not the only one, is initiation into the mysteries, which is a larger concept than Alexandrian or Gardnerian witchcraft. If you desire something to transform your soul, then you're going to have to go outside of yourself. You can read all the books you want. You can have all the statues you can collect. But eventually, you are going to have to go outside of your ego and find something larger than it. And initiation is the doorway to that. And that experience has transformed my entire life. I literally think of my life as BI and AI. Right?
Oh yeah.
So, I'm a different human being.
Before
now.
initiation,
And after initiation, yeah. I want my religion to transform my life. I am tired of being in the bleachers. And so I choose to be in center field. And that's what initiation is.
Centerfield.
Put that in a pamphlet.
Shiite Alexandrian.
I want to say something really similar. I have a degree in philosophy and a minor in comparative religion, and I was practicing on my own
Well, speak up for them, not
for
for
years
them.
and years and years. And I said to the gods, I said, I don't have a framework of structure around me. I don't have a bounce back. I can't get a reverberation of my energy because it's not structured with other practitioners around me. And when I found the Alexandrian tradition and I said, oh my God, there's a power and structure around me. I want to express myself in this way where it hits a wall and comes back to me. And I can see clearly what I'm sending out. I had Netherland before. I had an unending sending out, but no calling back. A coven, an Alexandrian or Gardnerian structure caused the walls around me to show me what I was doing energetically, that returned its essence to me, where I understood what I was doing magically and personally. And that's when I found the most power. I'm just crying about it. The most power of return, the power of return. And that's why I chose it.
Well, for me, I basically have to say that when I found witchcraft as a religion, it was my journey to finding the worship of the goddess as a religion. And initiation was one of those core components that was involved. But through my discovery, it's really that it's not only, it's the magical inheritance of human beings. Every peoples who do magic have had magical initiations. Initiations is a magical work. That's what it is. It's a work of magic. And you're asking the universe, or God, to transform you into a vehicle of magic, into a being of magic, into priesthood, right? So sometimes when you ask God for something, it happens, right? And so initiation is just a part of that. So we say something, I believe Maxine Sanders coined it, but I'm not sure. She coined it for me, is that there's such thing as the path of initiation. So initiation isn't just about the rituals that we go through. It is. But I'll tell you for myself, I'm on the path of initiation. I don't anticipate I will have another ritual initiation again. But I also don't underestimate the gods. So, but I'm still on the path of initiation. And once you set yourself on the path of initiation, you've asked for that thing. And it's going to transform you, but you're asking to be in a priesthood of magic.
Yes.
If you're talking about witchcraft, there are other magical traditions that's very similar in that sense. So for me, it's like I don't want to say I didn't have a choice, but somewhere along the lines, it just was a vocation, a draw. Now I don't feel like I have a choice, but the draw is still there. I haven't changed from when I first had the desire at 15 years old to get initiated, which didn't happen when I was 15 years old, but I was reading the books.
Just 5 years ago.
It was just 5 years ago. I was reading the books, and when I first got into witchcraft 5 years ago, there wasn't all this information. I call it misinformation, but there wasn't as many books written as there are today. When you have more books, you have more bad books. Right, and I've found, I don't know about you guys, but I found the quality of good books seem to remain consistently in the same ratio. Like, we get a lot more books, but the good books stay about in the same number, right? And if you read a lot, pretty soon you're just like, there's 8 Sabbaths. Yeah, okay, yeah, another bad ritual, okay. And we've all got our things to sort of prop us to what we really want to read. And it's wonderful when you find that book that addresses those things, but that's kind of how initiation is. It's the person who wants to know and needs to know. So I think that I originally did it because I was in love with witchcraft and I wanted to be a priest. It was a calling of a vocation for me, and it remains that way today. Yeah. And I still say, to end this off, that the most remarkable thing about witchcraft is that it is the priesthood of the goddess in Western civilization. And at present, we have no competition. Right. So we are now going to go on to getting in our sabbatical frenzy with the people at HexFest, and we wish you all adieu in the world of YouTube and Facebook. And if you want to know what happened here after the camera came off, Well, sorry, we're not going to tell you. What happens at HexFest stays at HexFest.
Thank you, guys.